Welcome to The Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others.
Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Podcast Studios in Rochester, New York. Mouth off at RockVox. RockVox.com. Having enjoyed a 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, executive and recovery coach, Keith Greer.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you, as always, for taking the time to sit in on this episode of The Helping Conversation. So I have a question for all of you. It's an incredibly simple question, but I thought I would ask it anyway to get this episode off and running. Why is change so difficult? See, I told you it was a really, really simple question, simple answer. I see my guest smiling at me. He has a simple answer, I know. And boy, what is it about us human beings, no matter how motivated we feel, how ready we think we are, that makes creating change, sustaining change, challenging under the best of circumstances. And so we're going to spend the next hour with our very special guest digging into this perplexing question. And we'll see what we can come up with. I have a couple of articles in front of me. I just wanted to share a little bit from each one because it's relevant to this topic. So the first article comes from a publication called Healthcare, and the name of the article is 8 Reasons Why It's So Hard to Really Change Your Behavior. I always have a mixed reaction to articles like this when they give 8 reasons or some bullet list. Like if you read the bullet list, somehow you're going to come up with the answer by the end of the article, because I've never found that to be the case. And this one highlights some of the challenges to change that most of us probably know. We can bite off too much, try and make the goal a little bit too big instead of breaking it down. We don't think through, do we have the necessary tools in the toolbox? Maybe we try and change a little bit too much too quickly. I think one of the bullets on here is we underestimate the process. Maybe sometimes we go into change and we just think it's going to be a little bit simpler than we thought it was going to be. And so I think there's benefit to an article like this, but the other article I have, I resonate much more with, and I think this is a little bit more of the direction we're going to go in our conversation today. And it's an article from 2017 from Psychology Today, and the name of the article is Why We Resist Change. And I'll pick a couple of places just to read a little bit of it. It talks about inertia, and in kicking off in this part of the article, surprisingly, inertia is an overlooked concept when it comes to understanding our inherent complex resistance to losing weight or beginning a new exercise routine. They're talking about health and wellness here. Inertia, or a tendency to do nothing or to remain unchanged, is at the headwinds of any change that we make in our lives. It helps to describe why our bodies tend to act against us when we try to begin a new diet or exercise routine. The concept of inertia and the psychological difficulties of changing our behavior were examined more than 40 years ago in a Psychology Today article on familiarity breeding comfort rather than contempt. And they go on to talk a little bit more about what inertia is, but here's the piece that I really relate to, and the heading in this part of the article is the neurobiology of change. It might also be surprising to discover that the steps to making meaningful life changes can further be complicated by areas of the brain that control our habits and conscious decision-making abilities. Our basal ganglia in the ancestral or primitive brain are responsible for wiring habits. This cluster of nerve cell bodies is involved in functions such as automatic or routine behaviors, example, habits, that we are familiar with or that make us feel good. Such behaviors might include nail biting, smoking cigarettes, or following the same routine every day without making changes to it. Habits like exercise form when we repeatedly exercise or perform a certain behavior in a specific environment or context. When we do something like put a seatbelt on, an action, when we get into a car, a contextual clue, we develop automaticity or an automatic behavior in response to the contextual cue. In The Psychology of Habit, Wendy Wood and Dennis Runger from the Department of Psychology at UCLA wrote that while some of this automatic cueing may be unintentional, deliberately cueing ourselves could help us to engage in particular habits. Any type of change, like incorporating a physical activity into our routine after a period of being sedentary, can go against the neural pathways that have become automatic to us. Thus, this is why we tend to fall back on our default or automatic behaviors when we try to implement changes like a new diet or physical activity after a period of inactivity. So here's a case where the case could be made that what feels right to us, I want to change my behavior, I want to move in a more healthy way, goes against the wiring of our brain. That our brain actually battles us a little bit with this, and that we can use that information maybe to create a plan that increases the chances we're going to be successful, especially when we do it in conjunction with working with a coach, somebody who can really help us think outside the box, raise a little bit of awareness about ourselves, and maybe move past what I often hear from people is maybe I'm just lazy or maybe I'm this. That it's way more complicated than that. So all of that being said, let me introduce to you our guest today, and we'll jump into this conversation. Paul Levitin possesses a decade of experience and expertise in the fitness and nutrition space. Paul is super passionate about the mental side of health and wellness, mindset, motivation, and personal growth. He is a licensed health and wellness coach as recognized by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, a certified personal trainer, behavior change specialist, and a lifestyle design coach. As a writer, coach, podcaster, and public speaker, he helps millennials stagnant in their career and life quitting on themselves so that they can unlock unlimited self-confidence, passion, and have total life alignment. Paul's podcast and his brand in general is called The Healthy, Happy Human, and he states that he loves to talk about all things wellness. So please join me in welcoming in to the Helping Conversation, Paul Levitin. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, looking so forward to having you here. And I know from our conversations in getting ready for our conversation today that we already had started talking about how we can use some of the good information out there, especially in the brain research area, to really take a look at why we sometimes have trouble getting out of our own way when it comes to creating change. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that with you. But in addition to the introduction I just did, why don't you share a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your journey, and how you got to where you are in the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate the introduction that you gave and, summed it up pretty thoroughly. But as you stated, for a long time, I worked in the fitness and nutrition space. So I was a personal trainer. I was a nutrition coach. I also managed a gym. So in those things, I learned a lot about dealing with people, because personal training, the first word is personal, and
right.
Everything is clients, building rapport. Yes, there's fitness in there, but that's what I learned is a very small portion of it. What the real job is sales, it's marketing, it's talking to people, it's having conversations. And through that, through my career in fitness and then nutrition, I got very interested in two things. One was helping people, right? Because I saw that what I was doing as a coach was helping people. I was helping people be healthier. I'm very passionate about fitness and nutrition still today. I think that people should be healthy, and that's why it's part of my brand. But what I also got very interested in was motivation and behavior change, because what I learned was all the information in the world doesn't help people change, right? I could give someone all of the information about how to work out or how to change their diet or how to build a habit. I mean, YouTube exists, and they don't need me to give them that information. Google exists. So we have this notion, I think, that we need more information. When I just learned that one simple hack or that one trick, then everything's going to be different. Right. And I learned that wasn't the case. So I got very interested in behavioral economics and just change in general. And how is it that change is something that should be so simple, theoretically, is so hard for everyone. And that led me down the rabbit hole that I'm in now, which is just helping people with motivation and self-confidence and general happiness. And now I call myself a happiness coach because at the end of everything that I do is happiness, right? Even when I was in fitness, when people came to me to lose weight, they're asking for happiness. When people come to me for a diet, what they want, they think that when they lose those 20 pounds, that they're going to be happier. When they have the abs, they're going to be happier. When you get rich, you're going to be happier. When I get the job, when I get the promotion. So with what I do with my business, with my brand, with my podcast, with my coaching, and happiness is just like, let's just go to the end result, because that's what we're all after at the end of the day. And I mean, it's a big task. It's a big question to ask. So it's the hard stuff, but to me, that's what's most worth tackling.
Yeah. I love that. I was just in a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a client of mine who's kind of on my end of life, around 60 and looking at retirement. And that's what we were talking about. And we reached this agreement between the two of us, him mostly, because it's his life that he's looking at right now. Meaning and joy, meaning and joy, meaning and joy. How do we use those two barometers as to a way to measure what do we want to bring into our life, meaning and joy, or happiness, to use the word you used. Yeah, that's it. That seems to be what people are looking for at the end of the day, no matter what else they call it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is, it's a concept. If you've ever, the authors Chip and Dan Heath, this is where I first heard this concept from, but the concept of upstreaming, right? So upstreaming is just like, rather than waiting for the problem to present itself, let's go upstream and figure out what the solution is before the problem even starts, right? And they tell an anecdote in the book where it's like, these two guys are standing on a bridge and they see a little kid floating down the river. And the guy jumps in to save the kid. And then as soon as he pulls him out, they see another kid floating down the river, and he jumps in to save him. And then see another kid and he jumps in to save him. And then finally the guy leaves the bridge, and the second guy goes, "What are you doing? Like, there's all these kids coming down the bridge." And he goes, "I'm going upstream to see who's throwing all the kids in the water." Right. So it's just like, let's figure out what the real issue is. So when people are coming for weight loss or for whatever the thing is, there is a reason. No one cares about their weight on the scale. Right. In a vacuum, right? They care about it in the sense that, one, there's a health aspect to it, but more often than not, they think that when people look at them differently, when they're going to have more confidence, they're going to have all these things. So in reality, again, happiness, I use self-confidence, joy and happiness. That's a discussion what the difference between those two are, but I'm using that interchangeably. But self-confidence and happiness, joy, as you said, some meaning to our lives. Like there's a handful of things that we really want out of this life. And now the way we go about getting it is, that's a big, lofty discussion, but it's just a few things. And then we think or assume that certain things will give that to us, right? Usually it's money, it's a look, it's a weight, it's a status in our community, it's a spouse, it's like the new car or something like that, because this is what society has programmed us to believe. But in reality, it's like, you just want to be happy, which is why, I talk to my clients all the time. I was literally just having this conversation today. I'm like, billionaires commit suicide. Yeah. I mean, once you understand that, you understand that money isn't the answer, right? Billionaires commit suicide, and there's a homeless guy down under the bridge with his dog and a sign that says, "Need help," but he's the happiest person alive. Right. So it just, once you can put that into your head, you can understand that nothing that we understand is right. And we're all searching for the same thing, going about it in different ways. But to me, again, it's more worthwhile of a pursuit to talk about this stuff, because this is the thing that everyone is trying to get to, just in a roundabout way. Yeah. The other thing I find myself thinking about right now is also in this pursuit, how often it seems, and boy, I've been guilty of this at different times in my life, to believe that if I get to here, I'm going to find that happiness, satisfaction, and I work and work and work, and I get here, and it's good, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. And then all of a sudden I'm working again. So even that seems to be just such a worthwhile, deep, layered conversation of what are we really looking for at the end of the day that will allow us to get to some place in our life where we say, I'm good. I'm not pursuing anymore. I'm good. And that seems to be pretty hard for us humans. Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's a paradox, right? I talk about these a lot. Pretty much everything is a paradox, because we want these things. We want to be successful. We want to be healthy. We want to be well off, but you're not supposed to want these things, because it is the expectation that leads to the possibility that we don't get it and that we feel disappointed. So we have a lot of these paradoxes. But the thing is that everything is based on a projection of what we think we will be like in the future. So, there's a lot of different authors who talk about this, but the concept of temporal discounting or time discounting, basically we're very bad at telling time as humans, meaning like not from now to 10 minutes from now, but now to 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I think right now, sitting here as a 32-year-old, that I know what I'm going to want as a 42-year-old. And I set about a 10-year plan to all this stuff that I'm putting into action now, because I have this big plan in mind, where it's a farce to think that I would know what I want in 10 years, because 10 years ago when I was 22, I can tell you right now, I was not having conversations like this. I was nowhere near where I am in my life. So to think that I wouldn't change that much, if not more, in the next 10 years would be silly, but that's not how we think about things. And because of that, we build our goals, our dreams, our aspirations, whatever you want to call them, which seem like good things to have, but we build them based on us now.
Right.
Thinking about what we're going to get in the future. When I lose those 50 pounds, then I'll be happy. But 50 pounds from now, it takes you a year to lose, and you had to give up eating carbs. And then because of all this different stuff, and now you're 50 pounds less, but you're not happy because you've gotten there and you didn't understand what it was going to take to get there. So there's an inherent paradox that's not to say that we shouldn't want change, right? Like it's still a good thing to have. But to me, I've been talking a lot about this recently with my clients and in my own podcast and stuff like that. To me, it boils down to the emotional attachment to the expectation. Right. So it's not the expectation, because you can expect to have something, right? The reason you get up and go to work in the morning is because you expect to get paid. The reason you go to the gym is because you expect to lose a certain amount of weight. The reason you do anything is because you expect a result at the end. The problem comes is when we put an emotional attachment on that expectation. And then if not, it doesn't come, we allow that to shake us in some way. Meaning, I can do the best work because I expect to get a raise at my job, or I expect to get a promotion when that job is open. But if it doesn't happen, I have to be okay with that as well. I can do everything right, and I can do all of the things that I should be doing to get the job. And I have to understand and accept that there is a possibility that it doesn't work out in the way that I want it to.
Right.
In the same way that I can eat all the right foods and not lose the weight, I can do all the right investments and the stock market crashes. And when we can separate ourselves from that expectation, or that attachment to the expectation and how it turns out, right? Like I can still want the stock market to go up and make me rich, but I have to come into it with the understanding that things don't work out. We don't get to control the way the universe plays out. And it's the attachment to that is what is, in my understanding, the cause of pretty much all stress, anxiety, strife, and every other negative feeling that will come about in our day-to-day life.
Yeah. You hit on the question I was about to ask you, which is this piece of, is part of that emotional attachment to the outcome, to the expectation, is part of that born of this fantasy we have in our head that we're in control of everything. And thus, if it doesn't happen, it must mean somehow I messed up, versus a larger systemic universal perspective that sometimes stuff happens that's just was not predicted and could have never been predicted, and it impacted the outcome.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And I think that it's more simply just that the deepest human need is control, right? It's autonomy. So we hate at a deep cellular biological level things that don't work out the way we feel that they should, right? Fairness is a deeply ingrained human trait, and not in the way of like, that's fair, in the way of like, if I do this input, I should deserve this outcome.
Right.
And it makes sense. Fairness wise, if I do the right thing, I should get get whatever the outcome is. And again, I use fitness as an analogy, money as an analogy. It's all the same thing. If I put in the effort, I deserve that result. But as you said, the universe doesn't work that way. And again, inherent in us is we have a need for fairness in that way, and of control, because the opposite of that is we're out of control. And that's a bad deal to our brain, because it's like, well, if I can't control anything, why even try? If I don't know that my inputs are going to get the outcome, how can I motivate myself to do it? So the inherent fairness that we seek is motivation, because it's like, well, I'm not just going to work out. I hate working out, but I will work out if I think that it will make me better in some way.
Right.
But now you're telling me that if I do the workout, maybe I'll get better, maybe I won't, which is true because everyone's body is different. Everyone's reaction to you'll get better eventually. But the point is that it doesn't work. It's not like a one-to-one direct trade, right? And the same thing with investing, right? Most people who invest their money in whatever stocks will see a return, but some people, the house always wins, basically, right? There's a way this stuff always works. So it's just that we have inside of us a need for fairness and for control, for autonomy, right? To be the masters of our own domain, our own, whatever you want to call it. And yet the paradox, as I was saying before, on the other side of that, we have the fact that we literally can't control anything.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard thing to grapple with.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Which also, I guess, at the end of the day, puts even more of an onus on us figuring out what we can control, instead of investing a ton of energy for a really long time with many of us trying to control the things that we can't. So let me go back and ask you a question about, more specifically about you and the work that you do. I am very big believer that for most of us, it's not a coincidence that we are in the helping professions. So if I knew you when you were a kid, what was there about you? How did you come at the world? How did you think about things? What went on in your relationships? Maybe messages in your family of origin that would have been some evidence that, again, it is not a coincidence that you work helping others.
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure. When I was younger, I don't think I was really like this. I was more of just kind of like a nerdy little kid. I've always been very logical. And that's why this stuff makes sense to me, because to me, it's very logical, right? It's like, if A, then B. If I can, do this, then this. And I didn't get here automatically. I went through my own journeys in my 20s. Again, I said I'm 32. It didn't really start my own journey of real personal growth until about 27, 28. And that was after, again, I worked as a trainer for 5 or 6 years before that. Right. So I was going through the motions, but at that time I was drinking a lot. I was partying a lot. I was doing a lot of recreational drugs and things like that. So I wasn't like living the clean life, so to speak. And then eventually, through my own kind of journey of self-discovery, I landed upon personal development, personal growth, whatever you want to call it, self-help books, podcasts, and things like that. And then it kind of, again, that's where I brought up the logic part before, because my eyes were open to this whole new world of like, what's possible. Right. I remember like reading my first personal development book and being like, oh, all right, like there's a different way to live my life. Like it doesn't have to be what I've been doing for these last 27 years. And then I listened to a podcast and I was like, wait, there's all this free information out there that people are just giving away. And like, I could just learn everything that I need to. And I kind of did all this on my own just to be for myself. But I heard a good quote just recently, maybe this past week on a podcast. And they were talking to kind of similar question that, a coach asked another coach. And, why is it that you do what you do? And he said something along the lines of healed people heal people. And pretty much once you go through this journey for yourself, how could you not want to share it? And that's why so many coaches exist and so many trainers exist and so many of all these things exist, because it's like, I've seen both sides of the matrix, whatever you want to call it. I've been in it and now I'm out of it. I'm like, you can have that too. People look at me at what I've done with my business, with my career, with myself, with my own personal journey. They're like, oh, that's so cool, Paul. I'm like, you could do this. Like it's literally not hard. Like, I mean, it's hard, but it's not like there's no secret sauce about what I've done. And that's the whole thing. It's like, it's painful to watch other people go through it when it's like, so clearly there's an answer. Yes. Now, again, it's not an easy answer. It still takes time. It takes effort. It takes energy. It takes a million other things. But the point is that what you get on the other side of that is what you were just saying. It's the joy. It's the meaning. It's all the things that we're searching for, right? All the things that we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, you can have that. Right. All it takes is working on yourself. Yeah.
And yet, and not to break our arms patting ourselves on the back here, but I am a big believer that personal development is not for the faint of heart. That's one of my favorite sayings. It is hard work. And so we can look at it, and for those of us that have invested our time in it, we can look at it and say, okay, well, that made sense. And yet we also did it. And we know that there are a lot of people out there that struggle figuring out how to take that self-help book or a conversation with a coach and incorporate it into their lives. So just, a very quick congratulations to you in being able to figure out for you, I'll say this at 63, Paul, at a relatively young age, what are some new directions I need to move in that are going to benefit me and maybe at the end of the day results in a real passion for doing this work. And by the way, healed people heal people. One of the coolest things about doing this podcast for me is my guests come on with these really awesome sayings. And I always say, all right, that's going on a t-shirt. That's on my list of sayings that are going to go on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I know it's a good one. And it just rings so true because it's true. It's like once I have, how could I not want to share this with people? That's why I started a podcast. That's why it's just what I want to do. But it's funny because you were just saying that we know this is hard. And this circles right back around to the question that you had originally asked at the beginning when you were introing, which is why is change so hard?
Yeah.
Because all of this stuff is theoretically simple. Read a book, listen to a podcast, say some affirmations, write in your journal, and yet here we are. And I would say that 90% of people are not doing that. Most people are unhappy. Most people are out of shape. So we have a disconnect between what is doable and easy and what's actually happening. And this is why, I talk about this a lot on my podcast, and it's a term that I've banned from my vocabulary and that I won't use anymore, but it is very apt in this situation, is easier said than done. Because every time I bring up a situation, every time I bring up something, that's a response. Easier said than done. Well, Paul, that's easy for you. It's easier said than done. I just don't have time. Like everything is easier said than done. Everything that we do is hard, right? It's easier to speak than it is to act. Yeah. So inherently, literally, everything is easier said than done. So I'm like, we can just wash that whole axiom away because it's always going to be true. And then to your question, again, you didn't ask this to me, but you were kind of saying in the beginning, why is change so hard? It's exactly that reason. Inherent in change is that it's hard.
Yes.
Because if it were easy, it would already be done.
Yeah.
That's it right there. If something requires change, what you are saying is this thing is hard because things that are easy are already done and don't require change, right? No one sets a goal to tie their shoe. You do it, it's done. No one sets a goal to eat more snacks. No one sets a goal to watch more Netflix. Those things are already done because they're easy. So inherently, if you're saying like, I want to do this, in that statement, you're saying that this is hard. You're not saying it out loud, but you have to accept that because if you're saying, I want to exercise more. I want to have a better relationship with my wife. I want to read more. I want to do anything. What you're saying is I'm not currently doing it. And the reason I'm not currently doing it is probably because it's hard. And my subconscious brain drives me towards easier things because that's just how life works. And inherent in me saying it as a goal, saying that I want it, admitting that I don't have it, I'm accepting that it's hard. So again, I just come to this and this is the first conversation I have with my clients. This is everything. Everything is going to be hard. Nothing about anything that you do ever is going to be easy. And we have to just wash that out of our brain because this is one of the biggest things that holds people back is they go, oh, I didn't realize this was going to be so hard. Oh, I thought this would be easier. Oh, I thought this would get easier with time. Oh, I thought that after 6 months, it would get easier.
Right.
Oh, I thought that, it was hard, but not that hard. No, it's hard. It's going to suck. You're going to hate it. Get over it. That's the point that you have to make. And then we can start. That's just the entry ticket.
Right. Or I was having this conversation earlier today with another coach. The misconception about what a coach is, that we have the answer, right? That I'm going to come to you, Keith, or Paul, you're going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it and voila. And I can't tell you how many prospective clients I've had angry with me when I say in my first conversation with people, I don't have any answers for you. I believe you have your own answers. I believe you'll figure things out. I don't have a magic answer. And so even that perspective, that narrative that's out there about what coaches do and who we are is so false.
Right. And again, that brings up exactly another paradox, as I was just saying. I love these paradoxes because exactly, right? We don't have the answers. I don't have any answers. I don't propose to have any answers. And yet Google has all the answers. And yet you have all the answers. And still, that's not what you need, right? So people, again, because how to be happier. You said there's an 8 bullet point list from positiveintelligence.com. There's this one, there's that one, there's a podcast. So it's like the information is out there, and yet we're seeking a coach, we're seeking a therapist, we're seeking a mentor to give us more information as if that were the answer for anything. But again, it's just not really how it works. And And the funny thing is that on top of that is like what I was just saying before about autonomy being our deepest human need.
Yeah.
So even if it were really the thing, we wouldn't want it because we want to be the master right. of our own destiny. Right. So it's like we want someone to tell us what to do. And yet by someone telling us what to do, we're not going to want to do it because that takes away our autonomy.
Yes.
So it's a whole Ghibli.
Yeah. And maybe even that one, just as you were saying that, maybe that is even, I don't know if this is possible, but maybe even that is a paradox cubed. So you just said, right? So everyone wants to be autonomous. I agree with you. But then they come to us and say, tell me what to do. Well, if we tell them what to do, they're going to get angry with us. And yet we know as coaches, one of the greatest gifts we bring to our work is to treat people with complete autonomy. That is how we create and hold this space that allows them to do their work, get curious, think things through, and make their choices. So at the end, it's still coming back to, if there is an answer, it lies in treating people with true autonomy versus thinking that I, as the expert, I'm going to tell people what to do.
Yeah, 100%. So I actually had this exact kind of thing play out in my life when I was doing personal training, and I was like a little bit confused, not confused, but it was like, the thing about personal training is people don't realize how many people actually get results. I was a personal trainer, and I think it was very helpful for people, but still I'd be lying if I said more than like 2 to 3 out of every 10 clients that I got really got the transformation that they want, which is not a good win ratio, right? Because most people, they come and they want exactly what you said. They're like, oh, Paul's just going to give me the answers, but it's like, I don't have the answers for you. I don't have, or I would give them to them. I would say, hey, follow this exact plan. If you follow this plan, you'll get the result, but they wouldn't follow it. Then I discovered I was, again, now I'm starting to learn more personal development. I started learning more about behavioral science. And I stumbled on motivational interviewing.
Right.
And the whole precipice of motivational interviewing is exactly what you just said, that we all have the answers inside of us, and that human nature is to do what we decide ourselves. So motivational interviewing is a style of talk therapy, you could call it, that helps people find that answer themselves. And me as a facilitator, I can talk through things to get people to come to that answer. So it's kind of like inception.
Yes.
And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, perfect. Like, this is it. This is the missing piece. Like, I know what they want. I just have to string them along to bring them to it. And I went back to the gym, and I thought everything was going to be different. And I was going to be the amazing thing. And what did I find out? People yelled at me. Like, what are you doing? They're telling me what to do. Like, stop with this nonsense. Like, I'm paying you for an answer and you're not giving it to me. You're asking me more questions. And that right there is when I learned, I was like, oh, there's no easy answer to this stuff, because again, the textbook tells me you can't just tell them what to do. Then I try to say, hey, but psychology today says that you need to be autonomous. And they go, no, stop that. Tell me what to do. And then they don't do it anyway. Yeah, so it's right. Human beings are complex.
Well, and you and I spoke about this when we first met, our shared interest and practice in motivational interviewing. And let me just say, anyone who's listening to this who is in the helping professions or new to the helping professions, and if you have never taken a training on motivational interviewing, please do. It'll be one of the greatest gifts to yourself and to the people you work with. And as Paul said, it's not a treatment modality. It's a way of interacting with people that helps to elicit their readiness to change, where they want to start the process, identifying their strengths. And what I find fascinating, because I've been in that conversation too, Paul, where I've been in a little bit of motivational interviewing, and the person sitting across from me gets pretty pissed off at me because I'm doing a good reflection. So what I hear you saying is, and they tell me what to do. So I'm curious what your thought on this is, because this is just maybe a little bit of the world according to Keith here and how I see things. In those moments, when they get angry with you about not telling them what to do, what I get curious about is, are there 2 different types of moments of not knowing what to do? Is there the, I don't know what to do right now, absence of a fact? Like, I just don't have a fact that I think is out there and I don't have it. And that's one not knowing what to do. But then is the more insidious not knowing what to do, the catastrophic story I tell myself in moments of not knowing what to do about what that means about me. Oh, see, there you are again. You never know what to do. You're such a loser. But that's a very different moment than just simply the absence of a fact. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that second part was actually very interesting to me. I've never thought about it exactly like that. But yes, so I definitely, there are 2, right? There is, I don't know, being a literal fact of like, I don't know the answer to this. But the thing is, I think that that's far and few between. I think that that's 1 out of every 10.
Okay.
And most people lean on I don't know. When I guess once in a while, that is the answer. Like, oh, I didn't even know this was an option. Thank you for telling me. But then if that's it, then the problem is solved right there.
Right.
So if the addition of the fact doesn't solve the problem, then the lack of that fact was never actually the issue. Right. So if someone's saying, I don't know how to lose weight, and I go, oh, here's this, whatever it is, this exercise routine and this diet combo. And they're, oh, I never knew about that. Thank you. And then 6 months later, they haven't lost the weight. Well, it's like, clearly you weren't waiting for that thing.
Yes.
So, and to me, that's the flip, is that, again, the 9 out of 10 people will lean on that other thing, and as if it's the lack of fact that they don't need, when in reality, I don't know just becomes an excuse.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of to what you were saying is, I've never thought of it as deeply as like, oh, like, because it's like a reflection of me and the things I don't know. To me, it's more of just a thing of like, well, I don't know. It's a conversation ender.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, well, I just don't know. I just don't know what to do. To me, it's the same thing. You mentioned the word lazy before. I hate that word because, again, it's a conversation ender. Oh, I just don't know what to do. Oh, I'm just lazy. Oh, I just need to be more motivated. It's like, well, there's no cure for laziness. There's no cure for motivation. There's no cure for I don't know, except for getting the facts. But like, once these things they're just kind of like weird things that don't actually present us with a possible solution. And people use that because they go, oh, well, I tried, but I just don't know. Oh, well, I tried, but I'm just lazy. I just need to stop being so lazy. Then it'll all be different. But in reality, that's not a real thing that you can ever do. So instead, as you've said, we have to actually focus on like, what does that mean? And how can we actually initiate change with that being said? Okay, you don't know. Well, what can we do about that? And we kind of go from there.
Right. And here's the information that maybe they come up with. And then it's, okay, so what do you want to do with that? How ready are you to do something with that? Because I love your point. I love that okay, I can give you the fact, and 6 months later, you haven't done anything with it. So then what's that about? Right? It's not just the absence of the fact. So we've I think I've probably touched on this in a variety of different ways already, but let me back up and ask a bit more specific of a question. So in your work with the people that you do work with, even if you repeat yourself a little bit, that's fine. Fill us in a little bit on what that work is like, how that conversation goes. Let's just say that person who's coming to you looking for, Paul, I really need to up my game around general health and wellness. Where does the conversation start? How do you get rolling with it?
Right. So, I mean, for me, it's the place we start is at the end, right? Start with the end in mind. I'm a big 7 Habits guy. Yeah. Start with the end in mind. So thinking about what is that big dream? What does better look like for you? What does success look like? What does health look like? What does wellness look like? Whatever these words, they're just so buzzy, right? I want to be healthy. I want to be successful. What does that mean? It means nothing. You're not telling me anything. If I'm saying I want to be healthy, who doesn't, right? I call these like magic wand goals, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, if someone would wave a magic wand and give it to you, you would take it. Of course, everyone would. I want to be rich. I want to be successful. I want to be this. Like, yeah, of course. What are you going to work for? What is worth? Because I said earlier, it's going to be hard. It is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun some of the time. So what is that big goal? What is it that you want your life to look like that's going to be worth the trade-off of the work that you're going to do, the money that you're going to pay, the time that you're going to take? So we start by building that out. Now, again, if we can talk about the paradox cubed, as you said, of building a big 5-year plan when we don't know where we'll be in 5 years. But the point is, you have to have something, because even if you don't actually get there, the thing is that you never end up at a destination you didn't set out for. Right. So this is why I get specific right out of the gate, right? What does health look like? Successful. What does success look like? Financially successful. What does that look like? What's the number in your bank account? How much are you bringing home each week? Yeah. I want to have a better relationship with my wife. What does that mean? Does that mean you guys are going on a vacation once a quarter? Does that mean you guys are going on date night every Wednesday? Does that mean that you guys are having conversations every night before bed? Like, what is it specifically? We need to get out of ambiguity and get into specifics. Beautiful. Because then we can break down what do we actually want here. And then from there, there's a few key things that I'm going to walk every client through, because most people are humans, right? My thing is happy, healthy, human. And human is the last word, because for the most part, we're all the same. We can all think that we're all special snowflakes as much as we want. And we are. You're unique. I'm unique. But in reality, human stuff is human stuff. So I'm going to work with a lot of people on perfectionism. I'm going to work with a lot of people on imposter syndrome, on the shoulds. I'm going to work with people on building their confidence and building habits, building routines, because these are are the things that I know, again, going upstream are going to help the most people in the fastest way.
Right.
And now, again, you have your specific issues that we'll get to, we'll talk about. Again, I am a board licensed coach, so we can talk through certain things and certain tactics, but for the most part, people are stuck and they need help getting unstuck. And, for that, again, we need to focus on two things. We need to understand the negative stuff. What's holding you stuck? That's the things like the perfectionism. That's the things like the shoulds, the imposter syndrome. And then we need to build you towards the future. And that's the thing like understanding habits, building plans, having that 5-year vision, understanding goals and that kind of stuff. So we kind of hit it from both sides of the net.
Right. Awesome. I'm curious. So I recently within the last year plus, I got diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy in my feet. And I started working about 6-7 months ago with a chiropractor that working with this issue is a specialty of his. And one of the things he did when we first met, I just thought this was so cool because he was the first practitioner I ever ran into who did something like this. So he did a whole assessment on me, x-rays and this and that, and invites me, we set another date for me to come in and sit with him and go through what the treatment protocol is going to be. And he said to me, "Are you married?" "Yes." "Bring your wife." And he was the first person who in that kind of practice that has ever made that systemic request, recognizing that the changes I was going to need to consider making to address this were going to impact the person that I live with and am the closest with and love the most. And I just so appreciated that systemic view. And so I'm curious on your thoughts on that as you are talking with people about making potentially some pretty significant lifestyle changes.
Yeah, 100%. I do the exact same thing. Even before someone signs up with me, when we're on like a sales call, I ask them like if they're married to bring their spouse to the sales call so they can be present, one in the financial decision of what working with a coach is like, but also in the understanding of what does this actually take? How is it going to affect them, right? Because if we're talking about health, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about finances. My coaching is all encompassing, right? So I'm not, because again, you can't have one without the other, right? So we can talk about your health and wellness, but we can't talk about it without talking about your finances. If we're changing the way you eat, if we're changing the way you eat out, we can talk about your finances and your health, but we can't not talk about your relationship, because if you're getting in arguments with your wife and you're stressed out and that's causing you to, say screw it to all your goals or whatever is happening. So everything comes into play, and that includes your spouse, that includes your kids, that includes all of the things in your life, right? And that's super important. And beyond that, it's like you can't expect for a change to happen. Again, going back to the very beginning, change is hard.
Yeah.
All I'm doing as a coach is trying to pull away roadblocks that are going to get in the way of change, because change is already hard. And we start these change journeys with so many roadblocks. And a huge roadblock is I start a fitness journey, or I start a nutrition journey, or I start a personal finance journey without telling my spouse about it.
Yeah.
How wild, what nonsense do you think is going on that you think you're ever going to be successful and you haven't even talked to your spouse about it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, again, it's just crazy to think. Or what I find even more than that is that people start wanting to change without ever telling their spouse that they're unhappy about something.
Yes.
Right. So we'll get on a call and I'll be talking to, so what, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to do? All this stuff. And they're saying all this stuff about how they're unhappy now, what could be better, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the call, their wife goes, or their husband, I coach women as well, but I never knew any of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were struggling like that. I didn't know. And so like, if we never talk again, that's already bridged a huge gap, because now it's like, now you're fighting on the same team. So it's like, we have to load ourselves up with all of the possible ammunition that we can. And having your spouse, having your significant other, having your kids on board is a huge integral part. And, beyond that, we can talk about your environment and how that affects you, but all of this stuff comes into play. And to ignore something so big is why a lot of people will fail on these type of things.
Right. Yeah, I think about some of the research out there around behavior change that brings in the concept of accountability, that we, us humans, tend to do better when there is some external level of accountability. And the opposite of that would be, I want to make this really significant change happen in my life, and I'm going to keep it a secret. Like we just know that that's just not going to work. That's a strategy that does not work.
Yeah. And I would, also press someone and ask, why do they want to keep it a secret, right? Usually because they've actually done studies where, again, when people make something public, they're more likely to follow through, even not accountability, like a post on Facebook or something like that, because now you have that's built in accountability. And that's just like the reason you probably don't want to tell anyone is because that's an excuse to be able to back out eventually. It's like, okay, like I'm going to try this thing, but I'm not going to tell anyone, but I'm going to keep it on the down low. So if I stop doing it, or if I fail, or if I stop trying, no one's going to give me shit for it, you know?
Yep. I'm sitting here, Paul, and I'm thinking about, and not to pick on your industry, but we're talking about your industry. All of the information that is out there, the commercials and the marketing around everything related to health and wellness that make it sound like it's relatively easy. If you just do this, if you take this pill, if you read this book, if you eat this food, lose weight and don't go to the gym. It's absolutely astounding to me. I don't know how many bazillions of dollars are spent in the health and wellness industry, but I'm sitting here curious what percentage of it is downright lying to people, I think, if we're really honest about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's horrible. This is why I'm not in the fitness industry anymore, because I just got tired of it.
Yeah.
But it is exactly that. And don't get me wrong, there's been a big shift in the last 10 years or so, especially with social media, that, one of the few good things that's come from YouTube and Instagram is like people are out there talking the real stuff. Now, again, it's still 80% garbage and 20% good stuff, but that's more than it used to be.
Yes.
The thing is that it's, again, paradox. Again, I've said this word enough times. Yes, it's a lie, right? To say that this is going to be easy, to say that anything else. But on the other side of that, how many people would actually try if they knew how hard it was going to be?
I guess.
How many people, so it's a bit of, in marketing speak, it's, sell them what they want, give them what they need, right? So people want the result, you sell them the big 30 pounds weight loss. Cause I did that as a coach, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to get you there. Now, once we start working together, now I can feed them the mindset stuff. Now I can now I can explain to them, hey, maybe the weight on the scale isn't everything that you thought it would be. Maybe if you don't lose 30 pounds, but you lose 10 pounds, but you feel better, that's a valiant goal as well. But it took me selling them the dream of like, hey, we're going to get you on the beach in a bikini in 6 months to get them there. So I do see both sides of it. Now that's not to say there aren't people who are being purely predatory, and that I think is obviously just bad. And again, people selling quick fixes, but that goes along with our society. Quit anything in a day. We'll start this in a day, learn this in a day. Everything is quicker. Our attention spans are smaller.
Right.
So fitness is a big part of that. There's good and bad in both of it. But I think, again, it just comes, and this is why, like I said, this is why I don't talk about fitness. I just talk about change, because this is everything that I just said about fitness. You could take out the word fitness and put in any type of change, and the same rules apply, right? We're playing the same game. So that's why I don't like to be in the fitness space anymore, because I'm just like, everything that I'm teaching people about fitness and nutrition, it can be in the broader scope of life. And to me, that's the stuff that I'd rather talk about. And then it was like, if you want to take that and now use it in your fitness endeavors, then that's great. It's going to help you out. But we don't have to be talking about sit-ups and crunches and push-ups. We can just be talking about life changes.
Yes. Right. So in your introduction, you mentioned working with millennials, and so I'm a baby boomer, and so I find myself in my work always curious, fascinated by some of the characteristics ascribed to the different generations. True or untrue, I'm not always sure, but share a little bit of what your experience is in doing this kind of work with the millennial population of folk out there.
Yeah. I mean, so when I say millennials, I'm just talking about myself. So I don't really know. I'm pretty sure I'm a millennial. I don't really know. I get confused. Gen X, Gen Z, and whatever. But my point is, I'm talking about 30s to 40s.
Yeah.
Young professionals, because these are the people, sorry about that I found that are the most ready to make this type of change. Meaning people who are in their 20s are not ready for this, because that life hasn't gotten hard yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember when I was in my 20s, and if you would have told me about this stuff, I would have said, fuck off. And I would have kept on going.
Yeah.
And then there's people in their 50s and 60s who are ready for this, but it's not as urgent and you're in a different phase of life.
Right.
So I think when I say millennial professionals, because again, I see a lot of my friends. I went to college for business administration. I graduated. I did nothing with that degree. I went and again became a personal trainer. But a lot of my friends work in regular 9-to-5 worky type jobs. Sitting in an office, suit and tie, and I see them all the time. And we would talk. We'd go out to a bar for a drink when I was drinking more. We just hang out. We talk and catch up. And none of them are happy. They're all unhappy. I have this job. It pays good, but I hate it. I go in, I put my head down, whatever. And it's just like, they've accepted that as if that was the only possible route to take. And then they see stuff like what I'm doing. They're like, oh, that's so cool that you have your own business, that you have a podcast, that you get to travel, that you get to do this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't think that, again, there's anything special about me. I think that you've accepted a lower quality of living, and I feel bad about that. And I want to show people that there is another way, right? Again, it's just taking people out of the matrix. Yeah. So the only reason I say I work with millennials is because those are the people that I most vibe with. Again, I heal people. I'm just taking people on the exact same journey that I went on myself. It's not at that they're, I have clients into their 60s. I have clients as young as 22. I do work with all types of people, but I just feel like my messaging and where I'm at, again, someone who's 30, 35 might be having their first kid or having their second or third kid, buying their first house. They have a different set of priorities. Again, as a 22-year-old who wants to lose weight because they want to go out drinking on the weekends and they want to look good look good on their Instagram photos. Right. So it's just a difference in perspective that I think being a little bit older brings.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think, I'm sitting here thinking at 63, I'm thinking, all right, so when did I really start thinking about me, right? And I would say, no, it wasn't. I agree with you. Really, for the most part, wasn't in my 20s. It was more 30s. Kids came along. Enough time in my career to ask, am I really happy with this? Those were definitely kind of 30 to 40 time period when a lot of that conversation for me started to become much more relevant. Yeah. So I want to get to this. We're already getting towards the end of the hour, but it just strikes me so that you do such a vulnerable, intimate conversation with people. Which I think is part of the reason why a lot of people move away from getting towards this conversation. It is just vulnerable making to take a look at, to take a look at self, to be self-aware, to maybe make changes. And so for me, a big part of my thinking in my work when I walk in with someone brand new is how do I attend immediately to the creation of trust and safety? Because we are about to potentially launch into a very intimate conversation. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that rummage around inside your head and heart is when you walk into that first conversation around creating that and holding that really safe space?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two sides of it. One is the actual logistical side of, again, I'm a licensed coach. I will tell people up front, I adhere to HIPAA standards and everything that we talk about is going to be 100% confidential and blah, 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 right? Boilerplate stuff. Right. But then I also want to communicate. I mean, either depends on the person, right? But I'll say this sometimes depending on the person, straight up, I'm not an asshole. There's a level of just being do what a normal person would do and don't be an ass. If someone is being vulnerable, when someone is being vulnerable to you, a family member or a friend or something like that, you don't just go and then go tell your friends about it. You hold space for them, you talk them through it. And this is just what I'm doing just on a larger scale. So again, to me, it's just a very logical thing, but it depends on the individual, every person I talk to. A lot of people come to me having listened to my podcast or followed me on social media for a while. So it kind of bridges that trust gap a little bit easier because they know me. Yes. So now it's more of me getting to know them because people who have listened to me talk like this, they kind of get it. But in reality, it's just being a person. It's just being a good human to other people, right? This is the same thing as meeting someone at a cocktail party, meeting someone at the airport, meeting someone anywhere else. Is just talking to them like they're a human. And for a lot of people, just that is a big deal.
Yes,
because a lot of people don't have someone to talk to. And the sad thing to me, but that's also the cool thing, because it's like I get to be that person for a lot of people who don't have anyone to talk to. And it's a cool thing to me. So I don't really overthink it. It's just me being the type of person that I would want on the other side of this talk if I was having it with someone else.
Right. One of the things I think about sometimes is I don't have an ounce of research to support what I'm about to say, but I do believe this. I think that if you ask most people, what is something you don't have in your life that you would love to have if you could, it would be, I don't have somebody who truly listens to me. And for me means listening really minus much of your own agenda, that I'm trying to convince you to do something. I am listening deeply to you. And I think, boy, if that's not a gift that some of us bring in the world, in the work that we do, that we are that person, as you just said, that person who will sit, I will listen, I don't judge, I don't have my own agenda, this is all about you. I think all the time, like, I have a really hard time listening that way to my children because I love them too much. And I'd be lying to you if I told you that I didn't have an agenda. But with my clients, it's one of the gifts that I think I can bring, that people like you can bring as a coach, is we can be that person in the life of maybe somebody who doesn't have that anywhere else. And that's huge.
Yeah. And that's actually super interesting that you brought that up about your kids, because this is a big thing that I tell people, when they're asking about what does a coach do and how can I help them as a coach? I'm like, the thing is that you need a coach who is that level of distant from you. Exactly. Like you said, right? Because people are like, oh, it's just accountability. Well, I'll just tell my wife to hold me accountable, or me and my friends will be accountability buddies. But the thing about that is those people are too close. Yeah. And they won't hold you accountable with your feet to the fire, like someone who doesn't actually know you that well, right? So, the people, everyone starts January 1st, New Year's resolutions, like, we're going to make a gym pact together. Like, I'm going to go, you're going to go, we're going to be gym buddies. And then like 2 weeks later, you send the text like, hey, I don't really want to go today. And they go, oh, thank God, I don't want to go either, right? And it's like, it's a different thing when it's someone that's like your family or your friend or something like that. So there is a level of having someone outside of yourself who you can talk to, but someone who also is an impartial third party, not a judge, right? Because you might not want to talk to your family about this because they might judge you for it. That you might not want to talk to your kids or your spouse or whoever else. So having that person outside of yourself and having them be distant enough that you actually can open up to them, and having them be distant enough that that again, they don't really care about someone tells me that they felt like people, it's funny, clients all the time, like, feel embarrassed about like telling me like the times that they've fallen off their plan or whatever weird stuff that they do. And I'm just like, I don't care. This is your life. I'm here to help. Like, I care and I care in as much as that, like, I want you to be successable, but it's like, I'm not going to judge you for it. Like, I get it, that's just how it is. But you need someone like that who is, again, far enough away that like that it works. Because if you're too close to it, if you're too close to the person, it will dilute it in some way.
That's it. Look, we're back there. We're back at autonomy, right? I always say that as a coach, and sometimes people interpret this as I don't care, which is not what I'm saying. I have nothing invested in the outcome, and I have nothing invested in the outcome because I can't, because it's not my outcome. It's yours. And so when I treat you with autonomy, like you said, you didn't get to the gym and you said you were going to. Tell me what does that mean to you? I'm in that conversation often in my work as a recovery coach with people in their own recovery who, come to a session and something happened between session A and today. And historically, they know if they told somebody, oh, you're not working a hard enough program. And it's like, no, this is your recovery, human being. You tell me. Right? I'm not here to judge. So we're back to what a gift that is, to offer that to another human being, that true autonomy, that and honors that this is your life, your change, your path, your journey, and I'm privileged to go along for the ride, right, in some ways. What would you say, Paul, for you well, let me ask you this, because being a coach is about being strength-based, which very much sounds like you are with your folks. So I always like to ask my guests to be strength-based with yourself. So what are some of your strengths, talents, skills, positive attributes that you bring to your work, bring to the world in general?
Yeah, I think that I'm extremely positive. And again, I never would have thought this about myself years ago, but to me, it's a combination of, I say, like, whatever you want to, right brain, logical, left brain, I don't know, whichever one it is. And just like, because people ask me like when my whole brand is the happy, healthy human, and how do you stay happy all the time? And how do you stay so positive? But I'm just like, why would I ever choose? Once you understand that everything is within your control,
right?
It's like, well, then any unhappiness that I choose to suffer through is my own decision, and I just choose not to do that. So I bring an air of positivity, but I also think that, or I've been told that my quote unquote superpower is to explain a lot of complex topics in a easily understandable and digestible way.
Awesome.
And that's why, people tend to like my podcasts and my blogs and stuff like that. And when we talk, people will nod their head as I'm talking. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I think that's like a really cool thing, because I read a lot. I have the book that you actually recommended to me.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's a weird thing that I do. I'm not weird. And it's just weird that I will just read, 100 books a year or something like that. That's a lot. And I don't expect other people to do that. So I think it's cool that I can read through all of these. I was reading a study before. I'm reading books. I can read through all this stuff, and I can kind of discern it down to a place that, being that I am a good communicator. And again, I think that a big part of this is that I was forged in the trenches of the one-on-one personal training world for 10 years. And the one-on-one, this is not just me being like reading and thinking, like, I know what it's like to talk to people. I know what people are like. I've dealt with one personal training session is 1 hour. We're sitting and talking, just me and you for a full hour. And I did that 8 hours a day for 10 years and like with hundreds and hundreds of different clients. So I know what it's like to talk to people. And I know what it's like to have to take a complex message, like how a muscle works, how physiology works, how, why this exercise is beneficial over the other one, and break it down into a way that someone will go, okay, I get it, and move on from there. So I think that's like the most important thing about what I do.
Awesome. The greatest joy you derive from your work, what would you say that is?
I guess that's a hard one, but I don't know what the one specific thing, but it's whenever I get messages from people that is like a breakthrough or like some cool thing that happened to them, like it's just so cool. Or even better. Well, my clients are the biggest one, but also sometimes it happens from my podcast or just like social media content that I do, where someone will just message me out of the blue and be like, hey, I listened to your podcast on self-confidence and like, it really helped. And I started implementing what you said about X, Y, and Z, and it really changed things. And it's just like, whoa, like that's so wild that like something that I said could just be out there existing on the internet and could change someone's life. So, stuff like that. And it happens, I'm fortunate to say fairly a lot. It's really cool. And every time I never take it for granted. And it's always such a cool thing that I can affect people's lives like that.
No, look, it's the gift of the work that we do, right? To have other human beings be able to say that to us. You said something, you did something. I'm blessed to have been around long enough that I run into people that I think I remember, but when they say, do you remember when you told me this? I don't remember, but they do. And that blows me away. And, to hear that and to know that our work will live on, I guess you could say in some ways that way. That's awesome. Awesome. Paul Levitin, thank you so much for being in this conversation today. This was a great conversation about a really challenging topic. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I love conversations like this. So I'm all for it. I appreciate it a lot.
If people are interested in getting in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would love that. The best place is just usually Instagram or LinkedIn, or where I'm most active. It's just my name at Paul Levitin across all social media platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, you can just find me anywhere, friend request me, send me a message, and let's chat. And then my podcast, The Happy Healthy Human, is where I'm most active. I release weekly episodes. And if you like conversations like this, then that would be the place to go.
Can you do me a favor, Paul, when we get off today, can you just email me all of those links? And I will make sure that in the podcast description with this episode, all those links are there for the folks that would like to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do.
100%.
Awesome. My friend, thank you so much. And I wish you, I know you're off on a journey here in a lot of different ways, and I wish you all the best. And I have no doubt that you're going to continue to create some pretty amazing stuff that helps people profoundly. All right. Well, listen, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. I sure did. just any conversation, we cannot have enough conversation about change. Just given the complexity of it for us complex creatures called human beings, we need to keep talking about it and supporting each other in understanding and rethinking, especially for those of us who have moments in our life where we feel like we're struggling with change, rethinking how we assess those moments and how we decide to move forward towards something bigger and better for ourselves. So I thank you for making the time to sit in with us today. And I invite you to join us the next time as we continue to shine a light on the skill and talent of those individuals that invite another into that compassionate, complex, and intimate space called the helping conversation. Everybody have a great day.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the helping conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the helping conversation.